My name is Iris Mendel. I'm 68 years old. By now, I can usually tell the time by the rhythm of the morning, the distant hum of traffic, the creak of the porch boards. The sound of my son's truck pulling into the driveway has its own rhythm, steady, careless, familiar. My son's truck often arrives around this time each month, though sometimes a day early or late. The coffee is already poured. I've been doing this long enough to know how he likes it: 2 spoons of sugar, a drop of milk. Never stirred all the way. For years, that ritual felt like love. Now it feels like a countdown. Outside, his engine idles. A low hum against the morning quiet. Through the thin lace curtains, I see his shadow cross the porch. My chest tightens, not from surprise, but from knowing what comes next: the smile, the hug, the question that always sounds like need. But this morning isn't like the others. A man sits across from me at the table, David Holbrook, my attorney. His dark suit looks too formal for my small kitchen, but his calm presence steadies me. The folder in front of him is thick, filled with the numbers I could never bring myself to say aloud. I fold my hands together, knuckles pale. "He'll be here any minute," I whisper. David nods once, sliding a pen beside the papers. "You're ready, Mrs. Mendel." The screen door creaks. Heavy footsteps. The scent of motor oil and cologne seeps into the room before the man himself does. "Morning, Mom," Ryan says, voice light, easy. He doesn't notice the lawyer right away. He never expects anything to be different, but today, I do. I straighten my shoulders as the sound of his boots crosses the linoleum, and for the first time in months, I don't reach for my purse. When Walter died, the house changed its sound. It wasn't just the silence, it was the absence of small things. The creak of his boots on the porch, the rustle of the newspaper he never finished. Even the kettle whistled differently, sharper somehow, like it missed him too. That afternoon, Walter suffered a stroke, sudden, severe. We had been arguing about dinner. He wanted fried shrimp. I wanted soup, and within minutes, paramedics were at the door. I still remember the blue light reflecting off the window, the way the paramedic said my name gently, as if I might break if he said it too loud. After the funeral, I learned how to live on numbers. Walter's pension and mine covered the basics: groceries, the water bill, my blood pressure pills. There wasn't much room for anything else. I stopped buying flowers for the table and let the radio fill the quiet instead. Some days, I talked back to it, pretending Walter could hear me from wherever he was. The house smells like lemon polish and sea air, now clean, contained, a space that doesn't argue or laugh. I keep it that way because it gives me something to control. The neighbors say I've adjusted well, that I'm strong. But strength, I've learned, is often just another word for doing everything alone. On good mornings, I sit on the porch with my coffee and tell myself this quiet is peace. Most days, though, it just feels like waiting. It was late March when Ryan first asked. The sun was low, slanting through the kitchen window, turning the dust in the air gold. I was rinsing dishes when I heard his truck pull in earlier than usual, without warning. He came in fast, the way he did as a boy when something was wrong. "Bad month at the shop, Mom," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "Can I borrow a little? Just until the next payroll." I dried my hands on a dish towel. "How much do you need?" He hesitated. 1,000 would cover it. 1,000. It sounded large, but the way he said it soft, embarrassed, made me want to protect him. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself that's what parents do. "Of course," I said, opening the drawer where I kept my checkbook. "You'll pay me back when you can." He nodded quickly. "Next month, I promise." Then he hugged me, smelling faintly of engine oil and the same aftershave Walter used to wear. That scent alone made the decision feel right. When he left, I sat for a while at the kitchen table, the air still warm from his presence. It felt good to help, to matter. The next month came and went. He didn't mention the money. I didn't ask. It felt small compared to everything I still owed him in love. Then, a few weeks later, another visit. This time it was $800 for tools he needed. The month after that, $1,200 to cover an order. I started keeping track in a notebook. Just small notes beside the dates. Not because I doubted him, just to stay organized. By summer, the notebook had several pages filled with notes of his requests. I still felt compelled to help, though the pattern worried me more each time. I told myself it wasn't about the money. It was about being his mother still needed, still part of something that mattered. 6 months slipped by before I noticed how much smaller my world had become. It wasn't sudden, more like the tide pulling back. Inch by inch. So quietly you didn't feel the loss until your feet were cold. I stopped going to the Sunday market. The prices felt heavier than the baskets. Instead, I began buying canned soup and rice in bulk. Things that would last longer. Fresh fruit became a luxury. Meat, almost a memory. When the pharmacist asked about my prescription, I smiled like it was nothing. "You haven't refilled your blood pressure pills in 2 months," she said, her voice kind but firm. "Oh, I have some left at home." I lied. I didn't. I'd cut the remaining pills in half, telling myself that half a dose was better than none. The truth was simple and humiliating. There wasn't enough money left after Ryan's visits. He didn't demand, not exactly. He'd show up tired, smelling of gasoline and long days, and explain how a part shipment had been delayed or a client hadn't paid. His stories changed. But his voice never did, always a mix of apology and confidence, as if he knew I would help. I stopped waiting for him to ask. Some months, I set the envelope aside before he even arrived. This will get him through, I'd think. Folding the bills neatly, but each time he left, the silence afterward grew heavier. There were no more flowers for the kitchen. No more small gifts for my birthday. We no longer sat together for lunch. He always had to rush back to the shop, the space between us filled with numbers and excuses, until even his hugs felt like routine. One afternoon, as I counted the last of my cash at the table, my hands began to shake so badly I had to stop. I told myself, "He's my son." The words were supposed to comfort me. Instead, they sounded like an apology whispered to no one. It was a Tuesday. Gray and humid, the kind of Savannah day that smelled faintly of salt and metal. I went to the discount store on Bay Street because they were running a sale on Staples flour, beans, instant coffee. My list was short, written in neat, careful handwriting so I wouldn't forget anything. Inside, the air conditioning blew too cold. I pushed my cart slowly, counting prices under my breath. When laughter drifted through the glass front of the store, it wasn't just anyone's laughter, it was his. Ryan's voice, deep and bright, the same tone he used when he was proud of himself. Through the wide window, I saw them, Ryan, Mara, and the kids seated outside the waterfront restaurant across the street. White tablecloths, polished wine glasses, the kind of place Walter and I used to save up for on anniversaries. Mara was smiling, her hair done up, a silk scarf looped around her neck. The children were dressed neatly, new sneakers glinting in the sun, and Ryan, he leaned back in his chair, a gold watch flashing on his wrist every time he lifted his glass. My chest tightened. Just last week, he had come to me saying he couldn't pay his employees, that the shop might close. I'd given him nearly everything left from that month's pension. Watching him laugh now, carefree and comfortable, I felt my stomach twist. I lingered by the aisle window, noticing them laughing together across the street. I couldn't hear the words, but I caught enough to know they were comfortable more than I'd expected. His arm brushing hers. I couldn't hear the words, but I could read the story, the ease, the comfort, the absence of need. I waited until they finished their meal and walked away, the children holding small paper bags from the candy shop next door. Then I turned toward the register, my throat thick. I didn't buy the coffee. That night, I couldn't close my eyes. The image played again and again, the sunlight flashing on that watch, the sound of his laughter, the waiter setting down a plate piled with shrimp and butter. My stomach growled in the dark, and I pressed a hand over it, as if I could quiet the sound of hunger with shame alone. The phone rang just after sunset. I was folding laundry, the television murmuring low in the background. Emily's name lit up on the screen, a rare call on a weekday. "Hi, Mom," she said. Her voice was warm but cautious, the way she spoke when she was worried. "You sound tired." "Are you eating all right?" Aunt Lila said. "She saw you at church last Sunday and thought you looked thin." I hesitated, staring at the stack of shirts on my lap. "I'm fine," I said, though even I could hear the lie in my voice. "Mom," she pressed gently. "What's going on?" Something in her tone broke through the wall I'd built. Before I could stop myself, the words spilled out. I told her everything: the money Ryan had borrowed, the promises, the missed meals, the half pills of medicine, the restaurant on Bay Street. By the end, my throat burned. Emily didn't speak right away. I could hear her breathing, steady and slow, as if choosing every word carefully. "Mom," she said finally, "that's financial abuse." The words stung. "Don't say that. He's my son. He's taking advantage of you." I closed my eyes. "He just needs help." "The business." "The business is fine," she interrupted. She suggested checking records and recent posts. Some activity hinted at profits, but the withdrawals still didn't match what he claimed he needed. The room went silent, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear, as if doing so could make her words less true. "I'll drive down this weekend," Emily said. "We'll sort this out together." After we hung up, I sat in the half-light of the living room, my hands still trembling. The word she'd used, abuse, echoed in my head. I wanted to hate it, to deny it, but it felt too much like truth to ignore. Emily arrived on Saturday morning, her small sedan covered in highway dust. She barely made it through the door before she wrapped me in a hug so tight I had to laugh just to breathe. "You should have told me sooner," she murmured, her voice trembling between anger and relief. We spent the afternoon at the kitchen table, the same table where Ryan used to spread his homework years ago. My old notebook lay open between us, the one with blue lines and soft, wrinkled pages. For months, I'd been jotting notes beside each withdrawal dates, amounts, small explanations in my neat handwriting, for parts, for payroll, for taxes. Seeing it all together made my stomach twist. Emily brought out her calculator. "Mom, this adds up to $16,800, she said quietly. "That's more than half a year's income." The number didn't surprise me as much as it should have. It only confirmed what I already knew: I'd been bleeding slowly and calling it love. On Monday morning, Emily drove me downtown to meet her friend's attorney, David Holbrook, a calm man with silver hair and steady hands. His office smelled of paper and old books. He listened as I spoke, never interrupting, only nodding as I turned the pages of my notebook. When I finished, he closed it gently and folded his hands. "Mrs. Mendel, what your son has done qualifies as financial exploitation. But I understand you don't want to press charges. Let's start with accountability." He drafted a document, a repayment agreement with dates, totals, and signatures. His pen scratched softly across the paper, a sound that made my heart race and settle all at once. "Does he always come on the 28th?" he asked. "Yes," I whispered. David glanced up, eyes kind but firm. "Then we'll be ready." When we left his office, the air outside smelled of rain. For the first time in months, I didn't feel small. I felt like someone preparing for something that mattered. The morning of the 28th came heavy with Savannah heat, the kind that clung to the walls and made the air feel thick enough to taste. I woke before dawn and set the coffee pot, not out of habit this time, but because I needed something steady to hold on to. By 10 o'clock, David Holbrook was sitting at my kitchen table, his jacket folded neatly over the back of a chair, his briefcase open beside the sugar bowl. He had the repayment papers in front of him, each line printed in clean black ink. I'd read them 3 times, tracing my name where I would sign when it was over. "Are you sure you want to do this?" he asked quietly. I nodded. My hands were cold despite the warmth of the room. "He's my son," I said, "but I can't keep being his bank." Later that morning, the familiar rumble of Ryan's truck reached the porch. Almost on cue, my chest tightened, anticipating the conversation I'd prepared for hours. He walked in without knocking, like always. "Morning, Mom," he said, dropping his keys on the counter. He didn't see David right away. "Got any coffee?" His voice faltered when he turned and noticed the man at the table. "Who's this?" David stood, extending his hand politely. "David Holbrook. I'm your mother's attorney." Ryan blinked, looking from him to me. "Attorney. What for?" "For this," I said, sliding my old notebook across the table. "A record of what you've taken." His brow furrowed. "Mom, come on. What is this? I told you I'd pay you back." David opened the folder. "According to your mother's records, you've received $16,800 over the past 6 months. His tone was calm, almost gentle, but every word landed like a hammer. Ryan's face went pale. "That's not look. I just needed time." "You said that every month," I interrupted, surprised at how steady my voice sounded. "And every month, I believed you." He looked at me, startled, as if hearing a language he didn't know I could speak. "I stopped eating meat so you could wear that watch," I said, nodding toward his wrist. "I cut my pills in half so you could keep your shop running." His mouth opened, but no words came out. "Mom, I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did," I said softly. "You meant every visit, every story, every time you let me choose between your comfort and my health." David slid the document toward him. "This agreement states you'll repay your mother in monthly installments. If you refuse, we'll proceed through court." Ryan stared at the paper, jaw tight, eyes glassy. "You'd take me to court." I stood then. I would do what I have to. For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and the slow tick of the wall clock. Then he reached for the pen. His hand trembled as he signed his name. When he pushed the paper back, I felt something shift inside me. Something quiet, but irreversible. The mother who had once fed him was now asking him to feed his conscience. The ink on Ryan's signature was still wet when the sound of tires screeched outside. A door slammed. I turned toward the porch just as Mara appeared at the kitchen doorway, breathless and furious, her hair falling loose from its clip. "Ryan," she snapped, her voice sharp as glass. "What is going on? Who is this man?" Ryan froze. "Mara, wait." She turned on me, her face pale. "I hired someone to follow you. I thought you were sneaking out, meeting someone. But he said you came here every month. I had to see for myself." David Holbrook rose from his chair with quiet composure. "Mrs. Mendel's attorney." He introduced himself gently. "We've just concluded a repayment agreement." Mara blinked, confused. "Repayment? For what?" Ryan's voice cracked. "It's nothing, just business." Her gaze shifted to me, then to the paper on the table. The truth landed hard. "Ruth, you took her pension." The words came out in a whisper that sounded more like disbelief than anger. Ryan's shoulders sagged. "I was going to fix it." "No," I said softly. "You'll pay it back, month by month, and I don't want to see you until half of it's returned." He looked at me like he'd been struck, but I didn't waver. Mara stepped closer, her expression breaking. He'll do it, she said quietly. I'll make sure. I'll co-sign whatever you need. David nodded, adjusting the document. That's wise. For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the clock ticking above the stove. I watched Ryan lower his head, shame heavy in his shoulders, and felt my hands steady for the first time in months. The silence in the room wasn't peace yet, but it was something close. 3 months later, life began to find its rhythm again. On the 15th of each month, the bank notified me of a new deposit, steady, punctual, quiet. I never replied to the messages Ryan sent after that first payment. There was nothing left to say. The numbers spoke for themselves. My pantry filled little by little: fresh bread, canned peaches, real coffee instead of instant. I bought my medicine without counting coins at the counter. The pharmacist smiled when she saw me. Good to have you back, Mrs. Mendel, she said, and I smiled back, meaning it. One afternoon, I passed the bakery on Bull Street and stopped on impulse. I bought a small lemon cake, the kind Walter used to bring home on paydays. It felt right to celebrate something small like breathing without fear of the next knock on the door. That evening, the air smelled of salt and rain. I sat on the porch with a cup of tea and opened a brand new notebook. On the first page, I wrote in careful letters my own accounts. Beneath it, I listed what mattered now: groceries, medication, savings. A note to visit Emily next month. The handwriting looked steadier than it had in years. As the sun dipped behind the marsh, I reached up and turned on the old porch light Walter had wired decades ago. The bulb flickered, then glowed warm and steady against the dark. This light isn't for waiting anymore, I whispered. It's for peace.